Good evening. Welcome to the October 17th regular meeting of the Orange County Board of Commissioners here at the Southern Human Services Center in Chapel Hill. We're going to do something a little unusual tonight for this board. We're going to go into a closed session for about 15 minutes now, and then we will reconvene into open session and have the rest of the meeting. So I'll need a motion from one of the commissioners to go into closed session pursuant to NCGS 143-318.11A9 to discuss and take action regarding plans to protect public safety as it relates to existing or potential terrorist activity, and to receive briefings by staff members, legal counsel, or law enforcement or emergency service officials concerning actions taken or to be taken to respond to such activity.
So moved. Second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes 7-0. Staff will be allowed to remain for this, and we're going to go into closed session now.
We never talked about another agreement.
All right, once again, good evening. Welcome to the Orange County Board of Commissioners meeting, October 17th, 2017, at Southern Human Services Center on Homestead Road in Chapel Hill. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? All right, I'll just note that there's some handouts at your places. There is a PowerPoint for item 6A regarding the DOT Rural Operating Assistance Program. There is a resolution for item 8D about county installment financing. And there is also a copy of the updated 2017 calendar. Actually, there is one a change or addition to the agenda that I would request. I'd like to add a closed session at the end of the meeting. So I'd like a motion to add a closed session at the end of the meeting, please.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, so we'll add a session at the end to consult with our attorney and to preserve attorney-client privilege. First up on the agenda is public comments. As everyone knows, we do comments for matters not on the printed agenda at this portion of the meeting. If folks are here to speak to an item that is on the printed agenda, those comments will be received when we get to that item on the agenda. And if you are here to speak to an item that is on the agenda, we ask that you sign up on the sign-up sheet in the back, so we'll make sure to call your name when we get to that item.
No one has signed up.
Okay, no one has signed up to speak to announcements not on the printed agenda, so with that, we will proceed on to item 3, announcements, petitions, and comments by board members, trying to keep that to 3 minutes, and we'll start with Commissioner Price.
Okay, I have two. First is at your place. It's the North Carolina Child Welfare Achievements. This is a printout that was done by the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners, and this year the presidential initiative deals with children. So when I went to the board meeting, they had these for certain counties, and I just thought that you all should have these statistics. We can review them at some other time if you'd like. The other thing, item I'd like to mention occurred at the TARPO meeting. There were extra CMAQ funds left over because, well, not really left over, but available because Pittsburgh did not want to go through with one of their projects. So thanks to our transportation director, Theo Lettman, he responded to the request to fund the purchase of one light transit vehicle costing $56,500, which will include an onboard camera and a radio, and that would increase the cost to $60,000, and Orange County needs to provide 20% of that $60,000. So we approved that at our TARPO meeting.
Great.
And I thanked Pittsburgh for giving up the money.
So
And
what is
thank you
that,
to
a
staff.
bus of some kind, or
Theo's right there.
a bus? Okay,
Us,
great.
yes, with camera and radio.
Excellent. Commissioner, is that all? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Jacobs?
I have some transportation questions. One is for Mr. Benedict. If it came up again at the Durham Chapel Hill MPO, they were making population projections based on a land use plan that doesn't comport with our land use plan in terms of densities for 2045. And so I know you've talked about that and you've worked on that. And could you please just report back to us where we stand on trying to get those to coordinate so that projections aren't being made based on false assumptions? There was also something that I brought up was the Orange Grove Road Access Management Plan and the fact that when we did it in the mid-2000s, we were told that DOT wouldn't accept a prefabricated passenger bridge, pedestrian bridge. And I asked Mr. Benedict to, my recollection is that, and the DOT people were all shocked that anybody would have ever told us that. And so Craig's going to write back to me to share with the MPO, but we should probably just share it with the Board of Commissioners. We've either been acting on an improper assumption, or we were given incorrect information, or DOT's policy has changed, which is certainly possible. But it might expedite having pedestrians cross, for instance, where we've talked a lot about Orange Grove Road, where the I-40 bridge is. We have kids going across to Cedar Ridge High School and Grady Brand Elementary. That's all I have.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. We'll follow up on those, or we'll get follow-up on those. Commissioner McKee?
Yes, I'd like to petition the board to consider engaging in a discussion, having staff look at the possibility of engaging outside counsel for the Board of Adjustments. I do this not in questioning any of our legal staff or anything like that, but to simply try to ensure that any Board of Adjustments decisions are not seen, especially should those decisions be against the county, finding ourselves in a position of giving advice to the Board of Adjustments or leadership to the Board of Adjustments, and then having to defend against that very decision. So I would like to petition the board to engage with staff on that discussion.
All right, we'll refer that to agenda review to follow up on that petition.
And I'd like to speak in support of that petition.
Noted. Commissioner Rich?
Yeah, so I have a couple. So the first one is I'd like to understand more what the Chapel Hill Carborough schools are doing now that they came in over budget on the two projects. I know we're going to talk about that in 6B later on, but I think it would be nice to have some sort of update on their plan. I know they were going to discuss it and it maybe come back in the spring, but I'd like for us to be kept in the loop. A lot of the forum questions that are being asked to the candidates are about specific programs and more money, and the updates, the upgrades of the buildings are included in there, and it sounds like there's a lot of confusion going on about money issues, operating costs versus building costs. So I'd just like to get some sort of update on that. And then we keep having this recurring discussion about sidewalks and bike and ped paths. We had it, I spent most of the day Wednesday last week with Barry and, Commissioner Jacobs, and once again, we were talking about money for bike and ped paths at the MPO, and then again later on at the second meeting. And then that night, I had a meeting with the Intergovernmental Parks Works Group, and we talked about the sidewalk about front of the sportsplex or near the sportsplex that falls in the county, and we're trying to arrange something with Hillsborough. So I'm just wondering if we need to take a look at this again. It's been years and years since we decided we don't want to do sidewalks, but I don't know what that means anymore. And I'm wondering if we can have, if our staff does it, or do we need some kind of consultant to help us out with that? I'd also like to know when the next NCDOT lunch meeting is. I don't think we have anything planned. We're talking, we know that there's some monies there that need to be spent, so I'd like to meet with them. And then, sorry, I have a few more. I'd like to ask the chair, if it's okay with this board, to write a letter to Go Triangle requesting that any communication between Chapel Hill and Go Triangle about the Gateway property be shared with Orange County and Durham County. Both Commissioner Jacobs and Reckow and Jacobs and myself were, again, spent most of last Wednesday together, and no one was very happy about how those discussions are going on, and it is part of what we were negotiating with the light rail. So I'd like a letter from the chair just to remind Go Triangle that we want to be involved in every communication. And then I don't know if this is too early, but we also talked about this at the Orange Durham Work Group, that we'd like to request as many jobs as Gateway and Light Rail proceeds, as many jobs to hire local people as possible. And I don't know how we go about doing that, but they are going to be jobs created, and it was requested by both Orange and Durham at that meeting. So I don't know if that's a resolution or if that's I don't know how that request happens, but does. I'm sorry. Do you want to?
Well, I was going to say we can refer that to staff to figure out
Okay.
the best way to do that.
Barry, I'm sorry, Commissioner Jacobs, I'm sorry, I'll get it right.
Whatever.
Did you want to add something? Because I have one more thing, so
To that, but if you're going on to something.
I'm going to go on to something else, yeah.
Please.
We had a meeting in this room, was it 3 weeks ago, Thursday, this coming Thursday, with representatives of Go Triangle, where we asked questions, including could they come back and let us know how many of the subcontractors so far are coming from which counties. We never have gotten an answer. And at the Durham Chapel Hill Orange Work Group, they were talking about trying to get job training for people, local people, and but they hadn't worked anything out with Durham Tech. And I sent somebody at Durham Tech a query, the Orange County campus, and they knew nothing, and they were going to check and see if the Durham campus had. But if the chair is going to write a letter, one of the things we could request is getting answers to our questions, because those are key considerations in all this. Part of our negotiations was how little economic development might come to Orange County based on the stations. And so part of the way to recoup that economic development is to have more of the workers and more of the contractors be included from Orange County, not be only from Wake County and Durham. I got a list at one Go Triangle meeting, and all but one was not from here. So I don't know that, I asked them to make a conscious effort, but I'm not convinced that they hear us.
Right. Yeah,
You
thank
had
you.
one more thing, Commissioner?
Yes. Just an update from the JCPC, the juvenile criminal group. So far this year, the number of reports are down, which is really encouraging. It is the beginning of the school year. They said that it's always down at this point, but it's way down, so it's kind of nice. So what we're doing is working. Also, Orange County Schools are doing something called Hidden in Plain Sight, and Chapel Hill Carver already did this. And what they do is they stage a bedroom of a teenager, and they invite parents from the high schools to come and find all the trigger points that might be in a bedroom that lead to risky behavior. And there's 81 things hidden in this room. So that if you want to get involved with that, you could just contact Orange County Schools. It was really successful at Chapel Hill Carborough School. So, and then two more things. There's a medicine drop at Cedar Grove. I know, two more things.
3 minutes.
I know. Medicine drop at Cedar Grove, October 28th, 10 to 1. That's at the Cedar Grove Community Center. And that's it. You're good. Thank you.
Commissioner Burrows.
Just want to let y'all know that the Board of Health is interviewing top candidates for the health director position tomorrow. I believe the manager may also be participating in that. Are you? Yep. So hopefully, not too long into the future, we will have a positive announcement.
Is there a projected timeline for hiring? Comrade Manager?
My understanding is that we will be doing all the interviews tomorrow, and then the Board of Health meets on the 25th of October, and they will decide what the next steps are if they choose one of the candidates tomorrow.
Great. Commissioner Markopoulos?
So following up a little bit on the light rail, I'd like information on any station in Orange County, not just Gateway, added to that request. Is that okay?
In that letter, sure.
Yeah. And I went to the Transit-Oriented Development presentation and public hearing, I guess it was, last night at the library, with all the Chapel Hill Advisory Council members and other folks. And it was really interesting, and I continue to believe that we need to be more involved in that. And I'm not sure, what's the most graceful way to get into that process. But I did talk to Ben Hitchens, the Chapel Hill planner, about coming and giving us a presentation in a few weeks. And so if y'all think that's a good idea, I'd like to have us follow up on that and talk to him and get him scheduled to tell us what they've been talking about. And also yesterday I went to the Family Success Alliance meeting, and it was a great meeting. One of the highlights was there's this team of UNC researchers that's studying how effective they've been, and they're measuring like educational measures and public health measures, and it's astonishingly successful. And I just wanted to point that out. You can go to the website and check out the data, the questions that they asked, and so that was really, really affirming of the efforts. And the one thing, just one little factoid that stuck out to me that we might keep in mind, because a lot of things that we talk about may affect this, which is food insecurity. And the national average for children is 18%, and what they found is 43% with their kids. So just wanted to highlight that. Thanks.
Okay, one thing. As some of you know, Reverend Nixon of St. Paul has retired, and they're having a...
No, he's been called to another church.
Yeah, so he's retiring from this church and
Oh,
going
yeah.
to Willington. And they're having a banquet for him on Friday at the Carolina Inn, and they've asked the commissioners to issue a letter and have a representative attend. I'd hoped to draft a letter in it for everybody to review tonight, but just didn't have an opportunity to do so. But I'd like just general consensus for the board to send a letter of appreciation for his decades of service to the community, and I plan on being there and present that if that's
Awesome.
if that's acceptable. I apologize for not getting a draft to you sooner. Okay,
I have one more.
go ahead.
And we can do it either two ways. I've, sitting in the TARPO meetings, noticed that, for example, we have boundaries, and sometimes they, well, not sometimes they do, but other, like the MPOs. And we had this one situation last week where we noticed that TARPO had one recommendation for NC 54, and Burlington Graham had another. And that's not going to work. So I'll leave it to this board whether we have a joint, have on our agenda one time where we discuss the different recommendations from the two MPOs and the RPO, or I can just talk to our representatives. I would rather that we do it in full, since we all are affected by these decisions, but
Well, what I would suggest, and I'll see that first, the representatives
If that's
of
what
the
you
two
want.
talk, and then we bring that, you jointly bring something to the
okay.
board.
That's fine. I didn't know if other commissioners wanted to know what was going on, but if not,
We'll tell them.
we'll tell them.
All right. Excellent. A lot of information. So next up is proclamations, resolutions, and special presentations. Item 4A is a presentation by the State Federal Emergency Management Agency, State FEMA, on the county's floodplain management program. Michael Harvey will make the introductions for the flood insurance program representatives.
Good evening. Michael Harvey with Current Planning. It's my honor tonight to introduce Mr. Randy Munt, State FEMA Office. I've enjoyed a 13-year association working relationship with Randy. It's him, his efforts, his cohorts at the state that make floodplain management, make our successes at the local level a lot easier to handle. Their guidance, their resource management, and their advice has been crucial for the purpose why we're here this evening, which is for you all to receive recognition that Orange County's community rating systems number has been reduced from 8 to 6. That is a good thing to have the reduction. Mr. Munt will get into that in a little more detail. And then at the conclusion of his presentation, I'm going to ask the chair to please come down and be presented with the plaque. without further ado, let me introduce Mr. Randy Munt.
Good evening, welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for your welcome. As Michael said, it has been a pleasure to work with him on behalf of the county, and this is an opportunity for the federal government and the state to commend and recognize the good work that Orange County has been doing. The community rating system, Class 6, is a pretty big deal. For those of you that are not familiar with the community rating system, it is a subset of the National Flood Insurance Program, which encourages, recognizes, and rewards communities that reduce and avoid flood damage to insurable property. It also strengthens and supports the insurance aspects of the National Flood Insurance Program, and it fosters a more comprehensive floodplain management approach to development in your community. So all lofty goals. The community rating system is a FEMA program that's administered by the Insurance Services Organization and has been implemented since 1990. It recognizes those communities that do administer regulations that go beyond the National Flood Insurance Program's minimum standards. It is a incentive-based voluntary program, which communities may choose or not choose to do certain aspects or not participate whatsoever. There are 19 creditable community activities that communities can pick and choose from. It is based on a 10-class system. You get 500 points per class, and for each class you move up, you save 5% on your insurance premiums per class. There are 1,391 communities that participate across the United States in the CRS. And they break down, basically, most of them are going to be in Class 9 or Class 8, which is where Orange County was up until April 1st. And you can see that there are only 217 Class 6 communities nationwide, 116, 5, 3 Class 4, 3 Class 3. So it's very hard to achieve this Class 6. It's only 15% of those communities are actually at that level. In North Carolina, there are 86 communities that participate. Only 8 have achieved the Class 6, and then 4 at Class 5 and 2 at Class 2. So you are in very lofty company, and this is the best part of the job, actually, is being able to go to communities and say, you're doing great work, and please keep it up, because obviously flooding is something that we can do something about because we can identify it. Specifically for Orange County, there are 89 flood policies in force. There are 10 which are in the special flood hazard area. Annually, the county pays out almost $42,000 in premiums, with the average premium being about $472. The countywide savings when moving to the Class 6 will be $2,638 annually, which comes out to about $264 per policy on average annually saved. By moving from a Class 7 to a Class 6, you're going to save an additional $66 per policy, and community-wide, that's almost $660 saved when you move to the Class 6. It's important to note that in Orange County, the highest standard that you can achieve, I think, is telling people this is not a good place to develop. And Orange County has been, for the past 12 years, has restricted development in the special flood hazard area. Additionally, 12% of the special flood hazard area has been set aside as protected open space. But again, prohibiting any new development in the special flood hazard area means you're not going to be increasing the risk for your community. You also have a freeboard requirement, which says if there is a known base flood elevation of, we'll say, 100 feet, Orange County says, let's put it 2 feet higher than that. There are also cumulative substantial improvements standards that if a building has improvements that go cyclically over time, you combine those and try and make sure that you aren't allowing something bad to continue. And there are also local drainage protections. You have in Orange County flood data available digitally that allows for better risk communication and administration of the flood-prone areas. And you've also established a system of benchmarks, and you maintain those benchmarks. Additionally, and finally, you have acquired 2 and relocated 2 buildings out of the community's regulatory floodplain. So On behalf of Mike Sprayberry, who's the Director of Emergency Management for North Carolina's Department of Public Safety, I want to congratulate you on this fine work that you've been doing, and I want to present a plaque to the Board Chair Dyson.
Mr. Chairman, as we're preparing the plaque, Mr. Mudd has informed me that there's a slight typographical error on it. They're going to be reissuing a new plaque. However, you will be presented with the certificate this evening.
Great.
You spelled your name wrong.
It's kind of the old bait and switch with saying you're doing really great, and then we go over and beyond what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and please accept the thanks of all the commissioners. You're welcome. Just go ahead and shake everyone's hand.
It's rope one.
Thanks, appreciate it.
They are separate, they're individual communities. Yes, that's correct. Thank you. Very much.
All right, well, that's great news and great work by everyone on staff and in the county and leadership in making that a reality. Really kudos to everyone. It's a collective effort, we know.
Can I ask a quick question?
Of course.
So how do people find out that they don't have to pay as much money as they used to?
We have an annual outreach effort where we reach out to property owners that are encumbered by the Special Flood Hazard Area Overlay District. We also have on the county department webpage, we maintain up-to-date findings of fact on our flood program. So for example, if you'll bear with me really quickly, because I know you have other things to do this evening, we provide a comprehensive detailed listing of floodplain standards, not only for Orange County, but updates to our program. We have links to our past CRS reports and the results of the CRS reports available. And obviously, as people come in to look at development opportunities in Orange County, as this board will remember from previous reports we've submitted, we produce what's called the site assessment and provide information on the opportunities and development constraints in property, including flood area. That's where we also provide information that's available at the request of the property owner in our floodplain management program.
So the people get the information, and then it's up to them to communicate to their insurance provider that things have changed?
Well, actually, with the insurance provider, you'll have the automatic reduction of the policy as part of the flood of the renewal, the annual renewal of your flood policy. We obviously inform people the benefits of flood insurance, how to get flood insurance, and give them the necessary information, including writing letters to the insurance companies about where their property is with respect to compliance with our local flood standards.
Great, thanks.
And where do we put these things up? Somewhere like where the public can see
You'll put it
them?
right behind up there, we'll take care of it. Brendan and I were
You'll
just
put
talking.
it up here?
You have one
Any
there.
of them.
We also have another one coming. We can put it, probably not there because of the video and the TV, but we thought maybe at Whitted.
Yeah, we should have like a wall of fame where we have all these
Anyone
plaques
at
that we...
Whitted.
Okay, great, excellent. All right, thank you. Next up, receipt of the Soul Smart Silver Level designation. It's a Orange County award night. It's like the Oscars. The board will receive an award given to Orange County from the Soul Smart program in recognition of attaining silver level designation for the county's efforts related to solar energy, and recognize staff in planning and inspections and asset management services for their efforts to reduce barriers to responsible solar energy growth. Brennan Booma will make the presentation. Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioners. Good evening. Soul Smart is this national program. It's relatively new. Works with local governments to speed up and lower the cost of solar energy development. Orange County began working towards our Soul Smart designation in February of this year. Quickly, we joined forces with towns of Chapel Hill and Carborough in working with a team of experts from the North Carolina Clean Tech Center over at NC State. Used to be the NC Solar Center, so they know what they're talking about. So over that following 6 months, the three jurisdictions worked together toward trying to reach for the highest levels of Soul Smart designation. And I think we accomplished a lot. Each jurisdiction's planning and inspections department created a checklist to clarify each step in the process of applying for a solar permit. The expert team from the Clean Tech Center was able to identify the best Orange County facility rooftops for potential investments in solar power going forward. And they brought in national experts for joint trainings on solar building inspectors and for first responders going to a facility that's having an emergency and also is powered by solar generation. Attaining the silver level designation, it is a tough one, as a Soul Smart community sends a signal to both the solar energy developers and to county residents that Orange County welcomes responsible solar energy growth. So I'd like to just say thank you to the county manager for her support in our pursuit of this designation, to my colleagues in the Planning and Inspections Department for their work, working with me to clarify the path for advancing solar energy in Orange County. And as always, thank you to the Board of Commissioners for your continued leadership and commitment to sustainability. So with that, I have this second plaque of the evening. I'd like to invite the picture down to take a picture with us, as well as Jeff Thompson and Craig Benedict.
That's cool.
I would add, this is the award that Commissioner Price accepted on our behalf at NACO, correct? Thank you.
But it wasn't silver then, right? It was bronze. And we,
No,
was
it was
silver?
silver.
I thought it was bronze, and we moved up to the silver
We
position.
did, but when we got the award, it was
It was
silver.
silver? Nice.
So does that award make you Soul Brothers?
Soul.
Thank you.
Add to the Wall of Fame.
Yeah,
I have one question.
go ahead.
Why wasn't Hillsborough involved?
Nice.
So communities across the nation are all invited to apply for this designation. It's free to participate, and there's a package of technical assistance that's also available. Communities, I know that I've spoken with other sustainability managers in Durham and Raleigh, and for instance, and they're considering applying for this. The town of Chapel Hill and Carrboro, they were ready to move on this designation at the same time. And so we just joined forces to get that extra level of technical assistance from the Clean Tech Center.
Did we ask Hillsborough to join us?
At the time, no, we did not.
I didn't see him come
In
in.
the future, maybe we could. At least, I mean, they may not, I have no idea if they have a sustainability coordinator on staff. I seem to doubt it, but since they're right up the street.
Absolutely. Now that we've gone through the process, will be even easier for them. So that's a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, thanks to everyone for their hard work on this award, and to Commissioner Price for leading it through the NACO process. All right, next up, we're on to public hearings. And the first one is the North Carolina Community Transportation Program Administrative and Capital Grant Allocations Fiscal Year 2019. So there's several items that we'll be dealing with here. We're going to consider conducting a public hearing to receive comments on the proposed grant application. Then we're going to close the public hearing. And then we will consider approving the Community Transportation Program grant application, which is a total amount of $479,000, más o menos, with a local match of about $57,000 to be provided when necessary. Authorize the chair to sign the resolution. Authorize the chair and county attorney to review and sign the annual certification and assurances document. So Theo Letman will make the presentation, then we'll open a public hearing.
Good evening, Chair Dorison, Commissioners. Theo Letman, Orange County Transit Director. Each year, the North Carolina Department of Public Transportation Division accepts requests for administrative and capital needs for community-operated community transportation programs. Orange County Public Transportation is eligible to make application for both administrative and capital funds under this grant program. The total CTP funding request for fiscal year 2019 is $176,215 for administrative expenses and an additional $302,854 for capital expenses. This draft grant application is made for expenses totaling $479,069. Grant funds for administrative purposes will continue to be used to support overall transit systems management and will continue to promote general ridership, and administrative grant funds include a percentage of wages and benefits for the following positions: my salary, which is partially funded, our transit administrator, our assistant transportation administrator, and administrative assistant at various levels of percentages as we work on community transportation. Grant funds for capital items include the replacement of 3 light transit vehicles, or LTVs, which currently have exceeded their useful mileage life, and to add 1 additional LTV bus to support Americans with Disabilities Act services associated with the new routes that will be coming. And I will interject a brief update. We'll be adding 1 of the 3 routes in the next month, which is the Orange Alamance Connector, which is a midday service between Mebane and Hillsborough. So one of these vehicles, the 88 vehicle, will be supporting that fixed route as a complement to that route, and also to add 1 support vehicle. As noted, the indicated local match amounts will be requested in the upcoming fiscal year 2018 budget cycle and must be committed from Orange County's budget for the performance period of 1 July 2018 through June 30th of 2019. And this information is in your packets. Questions?
All right, are there questions before we open the public hearing? Commissioner Price?
Will the new buses be electric or
No.
gas or diesel or what?
They'll be diesel.
Diesel?
Yes.
Will we be going to electric at any point?
Want to do it?
We can do the research on that.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? All right, then. What we need to do is conduct a public hearing to get comments. So we'll need a motion to open a public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes unanimously. The public hearing is now open. Are there any members in the public who have signed up to speak to this controversial item?
No, sir.
No? Okay. Are there any members of the public who meant to sign up and didn't have an opportunity to do so? All right, then. Yeah, this is like the most skeletal crew. This would be a good time to pass something controversial.
Yeah.
It would be. Okay, then we'll have a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, the public hearing is closed. Now, what we need is, is there any discussion of the proposal at this point before we go on to the resolutions? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the community transportation program resolution, which is at attachment 1 in the packet, for the application for the total amount of $479,069 with a local match of $56,719. Can I?
Can we move them all together?
I was just going to ask, Mr. Roberts, can we move all the resolution, the authorization for the chair to sign, and the authorization for the chair and county attorney to review and sign at once, or do they need to be done separately?
These can all be approved at once.
Okay. Commissioner McKee, you started to make a motion. Would you consider?
Yeah, I will make a motion that we approve them all as a package.
Second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded to approve the grant resolution, approve authorizing the chair to sign the resolution and the local share funding form, and authorizing the chair and the county attorney to review and sign the certifications and assurances document. Any discussion of those three items? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That passes 7-0. Thank you. All right. Mr. Letman, stay where you are. We're coming right back to you. So now we are moving on to the regular agenda. The first item is the 6A, is the North Carolina Department of Transportation. Actually, before we go on to the regular agenda, no, actually, we'll save those comments for the end, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go on to the regular agenda. First item, 6A, North Carolina Department of Transportation Rural Operating Assistance Program Grant Application Fiscal Year 2018. The board will consider approving an application for Rural Operating Assistance Program and accept funds totaling $185,949 for fiscal year 2018, and authorizing the manager and the finance officer to sign their certified statement of participation. Again, our transportation director, Theo Letman, will make the presentation, and this is the handout that you have at your places also.
Thank you, Chairman.
You're welcome.
This is our annual Rural Operating Assistance Program grant application for fiscal year 2018. And I just want to go through and just walk through and briefly explain what this grant application will do, and also cover some of the acronyms that are in here. I know from prior presentations, when you have a whole bunch of acronyms, we want clarification. So, the North Carolina Department of Transportation, NCDOT, allocates and designates Rural Operating Assistance Program funds, ROPE funds, each fiscal year to Orange County. ROPE is a state-funded group of grants administered by NCDOT's Public Transportation Division, or PTD, and intended for the county governments and eligible transportation authorities. This one grant is actually a conglomerate of three separate programs under the ROPE umbrella. First is the Elderly and Disabled Transportation Assistance Program, or EDTAP. You have the Rural General Public Program, RGP, and the Employment Transportation Assistance Program, EMPL. And ROPE funds can be used for trip-based service.
Behind.
Oh, I'm sorry. ROPE funds can be used for trip-based service or the public transportation system for specific populations, the elderly, disabled, job seekers, rural dwellers, and served by human service departments and for purposes such as medical appointments and job training. Here are some of the guidelines under the program. Eligible trip-based services: public transit vehicles, agency vehicle, private transit vehicles, car and van pools, taxis, mileage reimbursements to volunteers. Another guideline: must be used for the operating costs of the trips and not for administrative or capital costs, just the operating of that particular trip. And it's used toward the cost to provide trips when no other funding is available. And the emphasis is on considering the public transportation services provided by the public transportation system. The first program under ROPE, the Elderly and Disabled Transportation Assistance Program, or EDTAP, provides operating assistance for the transportation of the elderly or disabled. We currently use this funding to provide for our medical appointments for our seniors and disabled, and pharmacy pickups, these kind of trips. And these funds fund up to 100% of this type of service. The next grant program, or the next program under ROPE, RGP, Rural General Public, provides transportation services for individuals who do not have a human service agency or organization that will pay for the transportation service. And this helps patrons get the job interviews, job fairs, and training, GED, schooling, going to DSS appointments, public hearings, committee meetings. This funds up to 90% of the cost of that trip. And the third program, the Employment Transportation Assistance Program, provides transport to work or training for our DSS clients who are being transitioned off of TANF or Work First within the first 12 months. Workforce Development Program participants, the disadvantaged public and/or the general public. And eligible trip purposes under this program are for job interviews, job fairs, GED, and also to transport children of working parents so they can get to care facilities. And this program funds up to 100% of this type of trip. Under the elderly, the EdTap program, the allocation for $83,466, Orange County Public Transportation will continue to provide medical appointment transportation for our elderly and disabled. Currently, all EdTap service recipients are required to provide a copay or fare of $3 per one-way trip. The RGP, or Rural General Public, allocation of $71,537 will continue to provide rural general public transportation on a seat-available basis. On our flexible routes, fixed routes that we have, which is the Hillsborough Circulator and the morning Chapel Hill, Hill-to-Hill route, as well as the evening Hill-to-Hill route. The RGP segment requires a 10% local match, which would be $7,153.70, and we have already incorporated this in our budget. The EMPL allocation of $30,946 will be made available for the Department of Social Service trips, assisting former Work First passengers and other low-income persons certified for Medicaid or food stamps with employment-related transportation needs. I know you can't really see this chart that well, but I think you have it in your handout, but the highlighted portion is the breakout allocation table from the state showing what our allocation for each program is and the total.
What is that allocation based on? The population or the number?
It's based on population and the amount of seniors and elderly in our county, as well as the area. That is there, it's the state allocation per county. Orange Public Transportation is the lead agency for public and human services transportation in Orange County. And this grant application is going to give Orange County access to funding that supports vital transportation services for elderly and persons with disabilities. Transportation provided under this grant will help facilitate economic self-sufficiency by expanding transportation options for people exhibiting the greatest need. And these are the recommendations for this grant application.
Thank you, Mr. Letman. Are there questions from the board? Commissioner Price.
It just may be that I'm misreading some of the, but what about elderly that are on minimal fixed income? Do they, is there any provision for them going to medical appointments where they could waive the $3 each way?
The $3 is a county-imposed fare. Under the program guidance, it is suggested that patrons would pay a fare. It's not required, but this is something that from past approvals, the fare was adopted.
Right, but is there a way that if someone is really on, as I said, a fixed income, you know, right, living on the margin, you know, $6 could mean, you know, days worth of food for someone like that. Is there a way that they could get assistance and not have to pay that? And I'm thinking, and of course, some people may have to go to medical appointments several times a month, which is could be a good chunk out of their Social Security check. And do
So
we
I'm
have any
thinking-
kind of waiver? Oh, the manager has an answer.
Yeah.
I would say because, as Theo indicated, it's a county policy as opposed to a requirement by the grant, so it's certainly something we can look at. We can look at how we may be able to waive, given some kind of information from them. So we will look at that further and report back to the board what process we're going to follow.
Okay, thank you. Oh, and I had one other question.
Go ahead.
OPT, are we still doing the deviated fixed routes in, like, to Efland and Cedar Grove, Northern Orange, Bingham?
Yes,
Okay.
as I mentioned earlier, we're going to incrementally deploy those routes. We've had a staff person who is our trainer, has been out on extended leave, medical leave, so we having to ramp up or deploy these routes a lot slower than we anticipated. So we're going to start out with the Alamance route, then go to the Eflin, and then work on the deploying the flexible routes.
Okay, I was looking in the abstract where it talks about OPT on page 2, the second paragraph, the rural general transportation. So we has OPT been going out? It says one Hillsborough area route.
The
Has it been
Hillsborough
going-
Circulator, that's what it's
That's the
referring to.
circulator?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Any comments, any discussion? All right, then. So we're being asked to approve the application for the Rural Operating Assistance Program and accept funding totaling $185,949 and to authorize the county manager and finance officers to sign the certified statement of participation. I think we could probably do those in one motion if that's the board's interest.
So moved.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the recommendations. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 6B, revision to the general obligation bond sale amount. The board will consider approving a resolution to adjust bond sale amounts. Gary Donaldson is here to make the presentation.
Good evening, Commissioners. Gary Donaldson, Finance Director. As you recall, at the October 3rd board meeting, you passed a resolution authorizing us to proceed with the GO bond sale. That amount was for $48 million. The school bond portion was $40 million. Subsequent to that, we received the bids from Lincoln Center, which, as you know, were over the budgeted project amount. Therefore, as you know, the LGC, the State Local Government Commission, authorizes the GO bond sales, and they actually do the competitive sale for the county. In looking at the response on the bids, they determined that they were very uncomfortable with proceeding with the school bond portion, the $40 million bonds. They asked us to reduce that portion, the Chapel Hill portion, from $24 million to $5 million. The $5 million represents reimbursements to the county and the school system, and also to fund the design cost through the spring of 2018. Their rationale is there was no definitive plan with respect to the project amount, and so they were uncomfortable proceeding. So the alternative plan is that after receiving bids on the Chapel Hill High School, and if it conforms to our bond amount, then we would come back in the spring to issue the additional portion for the Chapel Hill school system. The resolution you have before you, the only change in that is the amount for the change dropping from the school's Chapel Hill portion to $5 million.
And I just want to clarify, when you say they were uncomfortable, you're talking about the local
I'm
government
sorry,
commission?
the state local government
Okay,
commission.
I thought that's what you meant. I just wanted to be clear. Okay, so, I'm sorry, is there more to the presentation?
That's it. We also, Todd LaFreeze is here, Dr. Todd LaFreeze is here to expound on, if you want, the Lincoln Center project, Chapel Hill project, and their plan.
Sure. So let me see if anybody has any questions for you, Mr. Donaldson, and then we can ask Dr. LaFreeze to come up. And I see our bond counsel, Bob Jessup, is in the house. Bob, do we pay you hourly to come to these meetings and sit here?
No.
Okay, that's good.
Thank goodness.
We can't afford that $695.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
Commissioner
in-
Price.
in the resolution, item C, what is this $5,900,000 of two-thirds school bonds?
You may recall, we passed that earlier in the year. The statute allows municipalities and counties to issue two-third bonds without voter approval. So that is, we retired $8.8 million in principal general obligation bonds in the fiscal year, and we issue up to two-thirds. We have the authority to issue up to two-thirds without going to the voters, and that's.
And is that any way related to the $15.9 million?
The $15.9 million is the Orange County Schools portion, and that does not change.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Donaldson? All right. Dr. LaFreeze, do you want to come on down, as we say in The Price is Right, and give us an update on what's happening regarding these bids and the school districts thinking?
Good evening, Commissioners. Todd LaFreeze, Assistant Superintendent for Support Services. We did open bids on the Lincoln Center project, and we had unfortunate news. The project came in $10 million over our budget. What we've seen is significant construction cost increases since the numbers were first released in 2013. But a real strong uptick in the last 12 months. And we had some indicators that this was happening with other projects in our regular CIP. When I think about some of the recent projects, we had a small field renovation project that we had estimated at about $150,000. And we solicited bids from, I think, 18 different contractors, and not one submitted a bid. Another project we had was kind of like a jump start on Chapel Hill High to reroute some utilities, and we had estimated that project at about $300,000. And when bids came in, we received one bid, and it was $700,000. And so we didn't move forward with that project either. Specific to Lincoln Center and school construction costs, DPI monitors this, and we compared costs from when we created our budget in 2013 to what DPI had for March of this past year. And based on that information, they showed a 59% construction cost increase in the Triangle area. $10 million is a lot of money, and so we also then had to think about our Chapel Hill High project, because we have two priorities with our bond funds. One was the Lincoln Center campus, the other was Chapel Hill High. And so when we took the square footage number and we apply that to the Chapel Hill High project and use a similar square footage number that we received when we opened the Lincoln bid, it also increases the Chapel Hill High budget estimate now. And between the two projects, we are thinking we're somewhere around $25, maybe $30 million short to be able to carry out the two projects the way that we have, the way that we've designed them. We had a conversation with the board immediately after our bid opening, and the board has asked us to come back to them with options, which is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to be going back to the board on November 2nd with a variety of options. Some of those look at scaling back some of the projects or both of the projects, or waiting until we see our bid results for Chapel Hill High in the March-April timeframe. What we do know is we don't have enough money. And we're going to be looking at district fund balance, looking at our existing CIP projects and trying to see what we can do within our own means. But I know we're also going to be discussing a potential need to have a conversation with the commissioners as well.
Are there questions for Dr. LaFreeze? Commissioner McKee?
Yes. In your internal discussions, is there any discussion of, I know you said scaling back, but at some point scaling back makes the project ineffective. Has there been discussion of terminating one project in order to effectively build the other? And I'm not specifically referring to either project.
Well, the board asked for as many options as we could come back to them with. From administration's perspective, there aren't many good options. And if you scale back, let's say you scale back tremendously at the Lincoln Center project, we wouldn't be able to increase capacity across the district, which was one of the big goals, not only for that project, but for our other projects as well. And so when we think about the class size legislation that's on the books right now and what that might mean for our district as well as Orange County schools, as well as the fact that Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools is running at about 98% capacity, that's hard for us to consider. Likewise, Chapel Hill High is beyond disrepair. Chapel Hill High, I have been saying, I look at that as our top priority. And so what I would like to see us be able to do is do the projects the right way and not skimp. But at the same time, I know we have to live within our means.
Go ahead.
Follow up.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
I tend to agree with you on Chapel Hill High, and that is one of the reasons I asked that question. I know that the Lincoln Center is important. The question, I guess, in my mind is, whether to do it right or to try to do both.
Other questions? Commissioner Jacobs?
When you were preparing for which two projects to bring forward, did you look at costing some of the elementary schools that might not cost as much, but would also require the same kind of upgrades, maybe in a second bond that might fit within the budget for this one?
We did, and it's not good news there either. Again, looking at the projects that generate capacity, if you recall, when we brought you the number back in 2013 for all of our projects, I think we were at about $160 million. I asked Bill Mullen to update that schedule based on the square footage costs that we got for Lincoln Center, and it brings that number up to over $250 million. And so when we start looking at some of those elementary school projects, they start coming in around $35 million. Plus, we haven't designed them, and so that just from the get-go puts us at least 2 years out before we could even go and get a bid. And we don't think we're at the peak of this construction cost wave yet. We think there's still more increases in costs that are yet to come. So thinking about 2 years out before we start something is a real scary proposition for us.
Thank you.
Other questions? So I have one, and I don't know if this is really for you, Todd, or Gary, or Bob, or the manager, but given the relatively long arc, of when these projects get introduced to the point they get funded or they get bid, why isn't there some calculation built in to anticipate those cost increases?
In the 2007, in this bond, we did increase from 2013, we increased the estimates up 5%. So we didn't ignore that. So these weren't 2013 numbers. We did put an increase in, recognizing that there would be cost increases over from 2013 to the time when it would be bid.
And then just the increases exceeded that in this case?
I guess so.
Okay, well, that's good. I'm glad that we're at least thinking of it that way.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so what we're being, are there any further discussion? All right, so what we're being asked to do then is approve the resolution to sell these bonds, and it will be, would be reducing the amount for Chapel Hill from the total amount from 40 million to 21 million. The Orange County amount will stay the same. The Chapel Hill amount will be reduced accordingly. And also the housing bonds and the 2/3 bonds.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Move the resolution?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Thank you. To be continued on that, I guess. All right. Next up is item 6C, Orange County Southern Branch Library Development Agreement. The board will receive an update regarding the draft development agreement with the town of Carrboro with regard to the potential development of the Orange County Southern Branch Library, and will consider authorizing the manager to execute the development agreement upon final review of the county attorney. Manager Bonnie Hammersley and Jeff Thompson of Asset Management will make a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll defer to Jeff and have him go over some of the elements of the draft development agreement that was negotiated with the town of Carrboro. One thing I can add, though, is our last conversation, there was concern about the parking. I did get the word on-site parking included in the development agreement, so regardless of whether the ramp is off-site, the deck, parking deck, that's what we call it here. The parking deck is off-site or on-site. If it is off-site, there will still be on-site parking available for library patrons. And I can say the town of Carrboro was very supportive of that and understood that. But I can also tell you at this time, the parking, where the parking is going to be has not been decided. And at the joint meeting next Thursday, they're going to talk more with all of you about the parking options that they're thinking about. So I'll turn this over to Jeff just to kind of quickly go over the development agreements, the highlights in it, and if you have questions, I'm here to answer them as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you could refer to your development agreement in your packet, there's an attachment that is reflective of some of the highlights. I'll just speak to those briefly and answer questions. The development agreement allows for a 45-day period of time from the execution of the development agreement and the engagement of a designer, which we're in the process of doing now with Carrboro, an RFQ process, to allow for some of the schematic design information to flesh out that will provide and inform the project before a final commitment is required. So there is a period of time between designer and getting that information back so that you can see and the Carrboro board can see what's going on there. There's a feature of cost allocation in your packet. The land of the project at 203 South Greensboro is going to be taken care of by the town. There is a series of shared or proportional costs. We're sharing site costs equally. We're sharing things that are geometrically the same, like the foundation and the roof plan, equally. And other components that, like the elevator column, for instance, or things like that within the building would be shared equally. Outside of that, other than the upfit costs, the things that are inside the space of the library and the spaces of other dedicated spaces belonging to Carrboro, that would be shared proportionally. You also have a schedule there. If we move along in a reasonable format and pace. We hope to have the designer on board in the next few weeks. That's a joint process of selecting that designer. You'll have an opportunity to review the final 2 designers within that RFQ process, and Carrboro would then select the final designer. And then from that, we would move into design with several touch points back with you and Carrboro, and hopefully be in a position to bid and construct about this time next year. The property maintains as I said, in Carrboro's control. It's contemplated as a condominium agreement after the development agreement, similar to the Gateway project, where there's a condominium association that affects and is responsible for certain parts of the building and the site. And then the interior portions will be the responsibility of the condominium participants, the town and Orange County. So with that, I'll answer questions.
Questions? Commissioner Rich.
Yeah, can you remind me who would be paying for any street improvements that need to be made to Roberson Street or any of the other streets around there?
Great question. The site costs and the off-site costs, which would include those street improvements, are being shared equally.
Is that in here? Does it say off-site also? So that's
I
what we
believe
mean?
there's an exhibit attached to the agreement that has all of that line by line.
That Exhibit A? The one with the blue dotted line? Where the existing water is, are you talking about that one?
I think it's Exhibit C.
See? Okay. Site, on-site, and off-site. Okay, I even circled it. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Commissioner Price?
Where you talk about, it says on page 6, project characteristics will include sustainable design and so on and so forth. Can you also include ADA accessibility or universal design?
Could we
in
add
it?
that?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Consider that. And then, that was actually more of a request than a question. And then, it seems like I had a question. Yeah, on the town parking, and I'm not sure if this is what you were getting at, but in the agreement, it talks about the town space being available, well, anyway, sharing, on the weekends. So will the town spaces be available for library patrons on weekends when the town is not, when folks are not in the office? Will their parking spaces be available for use, or are they going to have their spaces always open anyway?
Their spaces are always available for anyone using the parking deck. The only ones that will be designated, as far as I know right now, they haven't indicated any designation on their spaces, but we've agreed to designation for library during library hours, library patron spaces.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Burrows, did you have a question?
It's slightly tangential, but
So, in some regard, it's all
I
tangential.
get my turn for the tangential
That's right.
question.
All tangential.
I'm interested in this question of the 59% increase in construction costs. And I know this was, budgeted or costed much more recently, but I'm wondering if that is a concern at the staff level, that the bids will come in way over, as we've seen.
We will design the building with the town of Carrboro to the budget that we have.
Okay.
We won't go out for bid if there's an indication that it's going to be over.
Very helpful,
That
thank you.
wasn't tangential at all.
Oh, it turns out.
Other questions? Commissioner Jacobs?
I'm not finding it, but is there a stipulation in here that the parking will be free? Is there a possibility that it could be switched to pay parking based on a change in Carrboro policy, and how would that affect library patrons?
There is a provision that Carrboro can begin charging for access to their deck, and in that event, the county will be allowed to separate its parking, its library parking within the deck from that pay portion that is Carborough's. How that will work out, I don't know. That would be something in the future that we'll have to discuss at that time, but the county will have the ability to keep its parking free.
Well, if I might say, that was a nightmare in the
It was.
Hillsborough parking deck.
It was.
It was never, and it wasn't anticipated when the deck was built. And if it's going to even be a remote possibility that Carborough is going to consider that there ought to, and there's something that has to be built in, like the infrastructure for gates, we ought to, as part of the discussions, just talk that through.
Yes.
Because I imagine it's not very easy to retrofit. And I also wanted to know if the library director is here, dressed as she is, because she wants us to wrap this up.
She's cold.
So,
My conversations with the town manager regarding the pay, at this time, there's no indication. I mean, and that's basically all they can say right now, because there'll be future boards and there'll be future discussions. But at this time, if they were to put in paid parking, what I would anticipate they would do would be put in cards that we currently have. And what we would do if we chose not to have our patrons pay is what we do when we go to hospitals or anything else. You get your card stamped as you leave. So I don't think in the recent time, I don't see it as a concern. In the future, I mean, no one can say, but no one can say also about future boards here. But we both understand each other, Carborough and the county. And I do have to say, they have been extremely respectful of the county in regards to the parking and other things, because it'll be their residents, just like our residents, using that facility. But we'll do what we can to get, if we, there isn't anything real material sitting out there, but it hasn't been completely finalized between the attorneys, so we can bring that up and see if we want to put something in there and see if they have any heartburn with us doing that.
And their residents are our residents.
That's right.
Commissioner Price and then Commissioner McKee.
yeah, and on that note, see, one of the reasons I brought up my question earlier is because there's a sentence in here that says, talking about our spaces, the county spaces, these spaces will be made available to the town while the library is closed. And, I just want to make sure that, if we're offering free space and then when they take it, they're charging.
Well, they're not now,
Okay,
so,
so,
yeah.
okay.
Commissioner McKee?
I do think we need to clarify that. I don't believe that with the inception of the deck in Hillsborough, there was any indication that the problems that arose would materialize, and it became a nightmare. It really became difficult. So I'm not casting aspersions on Carborough and our working relationship with them, but as you mentioned, different boards take different tracks. So if we're going to do this, we really need to make sure that we somehow maintain control for our spaces. And I don't have a suggestion how we do that, but in the foreseeable future, and I realize transit will become more and more of a choice, but in the foreseeable future, the parking in Carborough is not going to get any better.
In response to that, unlike, this is not like Hillsborough's, the situation in Hillsborough. This agreement provides that the county will have a condominium ownership interest in its parking spaces, and the bottom of section 3M provides that the county will have the right to isolate those parking spaces. So unlike the parking deck in Hillsborough, where there were no designated spaces for the county, there will be owned spaces by the county in this parking structure, wherever that is, and that is in the agreement.
All right, any other questions or comments?
It's rock and roll.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I was going to bring to the board's attention a few things. As the manager mentioned, this has still been an ongoing discussion with Bob Hornick, the town's attorney, and as recently as 15 minutes ago, I got an email from him about this. So this is not the absolute final draft. There are minor clarification changes throughout the current document. But I want to draw your attention to the probably 3 or 4 major changes that are in the current document. If you look at Article 3, Section G, the last sentence of that, the town shall be responsible for design and construction administration pursuant to an interlocal agreement between the parties allocating costs. That sentence has been deleted. And the word construction administration added to section or Article 4, Section A. Reason being, there is not going to be another interlocal agreement. So we wanted to clarify that construction administration costs are going to be allocated according to that Exhibit C when the time comes. Below that, Article 3, Section H, the last sentence has been deleted, that being the parties shall share the cost of such remediation equally, referring to hazardous substances remediation, if there be any, on that property. Since it's the town's property, the town's agreed to take those costs on rather than the county paying for something that's already there. The only thing the county will be responsible for related to hazardous substances would be anything the county releases onto the property after this agreement is signed. And so that last sentence there has been deleted and replaced with another sentence to that effect. Going down to 3L and 3M, I don't have a specific change for you, but as the manager mentioned, the parking references in these 2 sections have been changed to include both on-site ground parking and parking deck spaces, so the county will acquire a condominium unit interest in whatever parking spaces are divided to it, whether those be parking deck or ground or both. And the last one is Article 8, Section A. Just the first sentence has been deleted, and that reference limits the remedies in this agreement, saying they are exclusive and cumulative, and neither attorney quite understood what that meant, so we thought it best to just delete the sentence and leave the rest, because we don't want to be arguing over that later. And those are all the substantive differences between that and what Bob Hornick and I are currently looking at, and what Carborough is also looking at tonight, I believe.
Great. Any of the other questions based on that?
I have a question. So.
Commissioner Rich?
Thank you. So in the recommendations, it says authorize the manager to execute the development agreement upon final review of the county attorney. Does that mean that you'll review all this and we won't see this again? We're just kind of giving you the go-ahead to work on this?
Unless, if, we obviously don't know what Carborough's doing. So if they make if it's some major substantive change to the agreement, I would certainly
Bring it back.
recommend that this be brought back to the
Okay.
board.
Other questions? Ms. Munger, did you want to say anything since you're out here tonight? And all right. All right, so I appreciate everyone's comments on this. I think the questions about the parking, it sounds like the staff is taking the lessons from Hillsborough and is drafting this agreement accordingly, and I think our spaces will stay free when it's available for library patrons. I think there's clear direction on that. So is there a motion?
Well, I'll make a motion to receive an update regarding the draft development agreement and then authorize the manager to execute the development agreement upon final review for the county attorney.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, and that thank you extends to you, my attorney friend, for working so hard on this. All right, next up, there are no reports tonight, so we're on to the consent agenda. Is there anyone wish to remove any items from the consent agenda? B, any others? All right, then how about a motion on the remainder of the consent agenda?
I'm sorry, was that B or D?
B as in boy.
Boy, thank you.
All right.
Move the rest of the consent agenda.
Okay, so is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so the motion is for A, the minutes, C, the Governor's Highway Safety Program, Orange County Sheriff's Office Traffic Safety Project and Budget Amendment, D, resolution to refinance existing loan obligations, and C, the Board of Commissioners meeting calendar for 2018. Motion's been made and seconded on that. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That passes 7-0. Item 8B, Commissioner Price.
Yes, I have no question. I just thought that, that these, for example, the Health Department should be congratulated on getting the additional funds, and I think that somehow the public should know that we have these programs ongoing and that we have more money in them, and that's the Youth Tobacco Prevention, Breast and Cervical Cancer Control Program, and the Wolf Mini Grant. And the same with, for example, the Department of Social Services. Congratulations to them also. And it somewhat relates to the handout that I distributed earlier on child welfare. And I think that we should really pay attention to the adoption rates, and congratulations to DSS for trying to improve the adoption rates among our children. And then finally, just again, we had a joint effort. I really didn't know about it until I got the announcement about this B Hotel. I know it sounds insignificant, but it's a joint effort with Hillsborough, and I just wanted to highlight that. And there's an event on November 4th if anyone wants to see what a B Hotel looks like. And that's it. And with that, I'll move this agenda item.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Why don't we ask our communications officer, Todd McGee, to make some kind of announcement about all these great efforts that are being made, as Commissioner Price pointed out. All right, all those in favor? I have item 8B. Aye. Those opposed? That item passes unanimously. County Manager's Report.
I have nothing to report this evening. Thank you.
County Attorney's Report.
Just briefly, today, supposedly, the General Assembly ended its repeated sessions for this year, however damaging they have been. Today, what they did was overrode the governor's veto of a judicial bill or an elections bill that may make it crowded on the judicial elections ballots next year for anybody that might be thinking about running. There's going to be a lot of candidates.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be any more judicial elections in North Carolina, but they introduced a bill today, actually, to make every elected judge's term, currently sitting judge, end on December 1st, 2018, and every judicial term after that only be 2 years. So, yeah, I mean, it just got introduced. It hasn't gotten passed yet, but, spoiler alert, it's coming. All right. We have no appointments. You have some information items at in your packets. And with that, we will...
Close session.
Oh, that's right. Commissioner Jacobs wants to make a comment, and then we'll get a motion to go into closed session.
And I apologize, I meant to do this under board comments, but I was afraid I was running out of my 3 minutes, and then I just forgot to say it. But I'm sure that on behalf of the whole board, we want to express our concern and support to the family of Tice Oldenburg from Orange High School, who was injured last week. We read he's doing better, and we hope that's the case. And we also want to express our condolences to the family of Bill Ray, who was a county commissioner in the past, and to Jack Chestnut, who was a longtime county volunteer, especially in the Department on Aging, and worker at Carroll Woods.
Thank you for bringing that back up. I do appreciate it. It's a real tragedy. And those condolences are well noted for those fallen colleagues. So with that, I need a motion to go into closed session per NCGS 143-318-11A3 to consult with an attorney employed or retained by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the public body.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? All right, we will go into closed session back there.